The observation. The Zephyrian research vessel Harmony's Edge drifted silently in Earth's upper atmosphere, its bioluminescent hull pulsing with the rhythm of curious minds. Commander Vex High adjusted the quantum viewing array, her 6 eyes blinking independently as she processed the impossible data streaming before her. Impossible, she whispered, her translator struggling with the emotional undertones. Analyst Mordin, confirm these readings. The younger Zephyrian floated closer, his tentacles dancing nervously over the control interface. Commander, I've run the analysis 17 times. The data is accurate. Below them, the blue-green world spun peacefully, unaware that it had just shattered everything the Galactic Council thought they knew about apex predator management. Vex High pulled up the most recent observation logs. There, in perfect clarity, was footage of a human settlement. But what drew her attention wasn't the bipedal creatures going about their daily routines, it was what walked beside them. Look at this one, she said, highlighting a creature with gleaming fangs and powerful jaws. Canis lupus familiaris. Descended from one of Earth's most efficient pack hunters. Capable of speeds up to 48 km per hour. Bite force of 235 pounds per square inch. Mordin's color shifted to deep purple, the Zephyrian equivalent of horror. And the humans just, let it walk among them. It gets worse. Vex High switched to another feed. This one, Felis catus. Reflexes 40% faster than Earth's most venomous serpents. Night vision 6 times superior to human capability. Retractable claws designed for gripping and tearing. They watched in stunned silence as a small human child approached the feline predator. The creature's eyes locked onto the approaching target, muscles coiling with lethal precision. Both Zephyrians held their breath. Then something extraordinary happened. The predator began to vibrate, producing a low rumbling sound. Instead of attacking, it arched its back and rubbed against the child's legs. The human, rather than fleeing in terror, made soft cooing sounds and gently stroked the creature's fur. By the 7 moons, Mordin breathed. They're bonding with them. Vex High expanded the search parameters, and the results flooded their screens. Everywhere they looked, the pattern repeated. Humans sharing their dwellings with creatures that should have been in maximum security containment facilities. More shocking still were the sounds the humans made when addressing these living weapons. Good boy. Sweet girl. Who's a good doggy? The translator nearly overloaded trying to process the emotional complexity behind such simple words. These weren't the commands of a dominant species controlling dangerous beasts. They were affectionate. Loving. Genuine. Commander, Mordin's voice trembled, if humans can form emotional bonds with apex predators, what does that make humans themselves? Before Vex High could answer, their communications array crackled to life. The distinctive harmonics of the Galactic Council emergency frequency filled the vessel. All research vessels, this is High Counselor Theteron. We have detected unusual readings from your sector. Report immediately. Vex High looked at her subordinate, then at the impossible data still streaming across their screens. Earth had just become the most interesting, and potentially dangerous, world in their galaxy. She opened the comm channel. High Counselor, we have significant findings to report. The Council's disbelief. The Galactic Council chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives from 47 different species buzzed, chirped, and harmonized their disbelief as Vex High's report echoed through the crystalline amphitheater. High Counselor Theteron, a being whose ancient form resembled liquid starlight, raised 3 of his limbs for silence. Commander Vex High, you're asking us to believe that humans have domesticated their planet's apex predators, for companionship? Not just companionship, High Counselor, Vex High replied through the quantum link. They've integrated them into their family structures. They feed them premium nutrients, provide medical care superior to what many species offer their own kind, and allow these predators to sleep in their personal dwellings. Counselor Brixton, whose species had been terrorized by their own world's predators for millennia before achieving spaceflight, trembled visibly. Impossible. No species voluntarily cohabits with creatures capable of killing them. With respect, Counselor, Mordin interjected, we have documented thousands of hours of footage. Shall I transmit the compilation showing human juveniles interacting with these creatures? A collective shudder ran through the chamber as the first images materialized in the central viewing sphere. A human child, no more than 6 rotations old, was shown tumbling playfully with a creature that could easily overpower a full-grown Rigelian warrior. Stop the transmission, wheezed Counselor Zarfact, his respiratory sacs inflating with panic. Are we witnessing some form of ritualistic sacrifice? No, Vexhai said quietly. They call it playing. The word translated poorly across species barriers, but its meaning was unmistakable. These apex predators weren't hunting, weren't asserting dominance, weren't following survival instincts. They were enjoying themselves. Theteron's form flickered with what could only be described as existential confusion. Commander, in your assessment, do these humans control these creatures through fear? Superior technology? Psychic manipulation? None of those, High Counselor. From what we can determine, the bond is voluntary. Mutual. Based on what they call love. Another word that broke several translation matrices. Counselor Nexera, whose species communicated through color-shifting membrane displays, cycled through rapid patterns of orange and violet, their equivalent of nervous laughter. So you're telling us that the most dangerous planet we've encountered is dangerous not because of its weapons or military might, but because its inhabitants have somehow convinced killing machines to love them? That appears to be correct. The chamber fell silent except for the ambient hum of the station's life support systems. Finally, Theteron spoke. This changes everything. If humans can form genuine emotional bonds with apex predators, it suggests a level of emotional intelligence and interspecies communication that surpasses our most advanced civilizations. We need more data. High Counselor, Vexhai ventured, there's more. We've also documented their interactions with creatures they've rescued from life-threatening situations. Injured predators that humans nurse back to health, not for utilitarian purposes, but simply because they believe it's the right thing to do. Rescue. Brixton's translator nearly sparked. They actively seek out injured predators. We have footage of humans risking their own lives to save creatures that could kill them. They have entire organizations dedicated to this purpose. Theteron's form brightened to an almost blinding intensity. Begin Phase 2 observation immediately. I want to understand how this is possible. And Commander, be extremely careful. Any species capable of forming emotional bonds with apex predators might be more dangerous than we initially calculated. Or, came a small voice from the back of the chamber, they might be exactly what this galaxy needs. The comment came from the smallest representative, a young being whose species had only recently joined the council. But her words carried a weight that silenced the entire assembly. Because deep down, they all wondered, if humans could love creatures designed to kill them, what could they offer to species willing to be their friends? Shadow's story. While the Galactic Council debated in the stars above, Shadow lay beside Leia's bed in the quiet Oregon home, unaware that he had become the centerpiece of an interstellar revelation. The retired German shepherd had found his rhythm in the Grant household. His legs still ached on cold mornings, and his dreams were still haunted by the sound of falling rocks and desperate human voices, but something had shifted. The silent girl who'd bought him at auction had given him something he'd lost during his final mission, purpose. Leia sat on her bedroom floor, a worn copy of Where the Red Fern Grows open in her lap. For weeks now, she'd been reading aloud to Shadow, her voice barely above a whisper. It was the first time she'd spoken since the accident that took her parents, and somehow, it felt right to share her words with someone who understood trauma. Billy worked all summer to save money for his dogs, she read, her fingers gently stroking Shadow's graying muzzle. He wanted them more than anything in the world. Shadow's ears perked up at the emotion in her voice. His training had taught him to read human stress signals, but this was different. This was healing, and somehow, his presence was part of it. Raymond paused in the hallway, listening. His granddaughter's voice was getting stronger each day. Dr. Kessler had been right, Shadow wasn't just recovering, he was helping Leia recover too. Above them, undetected by human instruments, the Zephyrian observation drone recorded every moment. Mordin watched the feed with growing amazement. "Commander, are you seeing this? The injured human juvenile and the wounded predator, they're synchronizing their recovery patterns." Vex-High studied the biometric readings streaming from their sensors. "Remarkable. The dog's stress hormones decrease when the child vocalizes. And look at this, the child's neural activity shows increased calm state patterns when in physical contact with the predator. It's like they're healing each other." That's exactly what they're doing. The drone's advanced sensors picked up something else, the vibrations in Shadow's chest when Leia spoke. It wasn't the aggressive growl they documented from wild canines. It was deeper, rhythmic, almost musical. "What is that sound the predator is making?" Mordin asked. Vex-High consulted the cultural database they'd compiled. Humans call it purring, though this specific variant appears to be unique to their domesticated canines. It indicates contentment, safety, and affection. A killing machine is expressing affection to a vulnerable juvenile. Not just expressing it, feeling it. Our neurological scanners confirm genuine emotional attachment. They watched as Leia closed the book and leaned against Shadow's side. The dog, capable of tracking criminals through miles of wilderness and bringing down armed suspects, gently adjusted his position to make himself more comfortable for her to lean against. "There's something else," Vex-High noted, highlighting another data stream. "The child's recovery rate has accelerated since the predator's arrival. Her sleep patterns have improved, stress indicators have decreased, and her vocalization attempts have increased by 300%. The predator is functioning as medical equipment?" "No, Mordin. It's functioning as family." The word hung in the quantum-transmitted air between them. Family. A concept that existed across species but had never been documented between apex predators and potential prey. As they watched, Raymond entered the room with two bowls, one filled with a medication-enhanced meal for Shadow, the other with soup for Leia. He set them down and ruffled his granddaughter's hair gently. "How's the reading going, kiddo?" "Billy's going to get his dogs," Leia whispered, the first word she'd spoken to her grandfather in months. Raymond's eyes filled with tears, but he kept his voice steady. "That's a good story. Shadow seems to like it too." The dog's tail thumped once against the floor, a sound that registered on the drone's audio sensors as a percussion instrument of pure contentment. "Commander," Mordin said quietly, "I think I'm beginning to understand why the humans call them good boys." "Why?" "Because to humans, they are. Not predators, not weapons, not tools. They're family members who happen to be incredibly good at what they do." Vex-High recorded her final observation of the day, species classification amendment required, humans do not domesticate apex predators. They adopt them. The test. 3 months after the initial observations, the Galactic Council faced an unprecedented decision. The data from Earth was undeniable, but it challenged everything they thought they knew about interspecies relations. High Counselor Theteron had called for an emergency session. "The implications are staggering," announced Counselor Brixton, his form shimmering with anxiety. "If humans can emotionally bond with apex predators, they represent either the greatest diplomatic opportunity in galactic history, or the greatest threat. Which is why," Theteron interjected, "we must conduct a direct test." The chamber buzzed with nervous energy. Direct contact with an uncontacted species was forbidden by the most sacred laws of the Council. "High Counselor," Vex-High's voice crackled through the calm, "what kind of test do you propose? We've identified several human-predator pairs across their planet. We want to observe their reaction to a controlled crisis situation. Will the predators protect the humans? Will the humans sacrifice themselves for the predators? We need to understand the true nature of this bond. Back on Earth, Raymond Grant was dealing with his own crisis. Leia had been making remarkable progress, speaking more each day and even venturing outside with Shadow. But this morning brought unexpected challenges. A severe storm had knocked out power lines across the county, and worse, a wildfire had started in the hills just 10 miles from their home. Evacuation orders were being issued for their district. "Leia, we need to pack up and head to the shelter in town," Raymond called, stuffing important documents into a waterproof bag. But when he turned around, he found his granddaughter kneeling beside Shadow, who was whimpering and pacing restlessly. "Granddad, something's wrong with Shadow. He won't calm down." Shadow was displaying behavior Raymond had never seen before. The dog was moving from window to window, ears pricked forward, occasionally letting out low, urgent barks. His tail was straight out, his posture alert and focused. Above them, the Zephyrian observers watched with intense interest. Their sensors had detected what the humans couldn't yet perceive, dangerous levels of carbon monoxide leaking from a damaged gas line in the house next door. "The predator has detected the threat," Mordin noted. Canine olfactory systems are approximately 40 times more sensitive than humans. He knows they're in danger. But will he act on it? Vexhai wondered. Shadow suddenly stopped pacing and ran to the front door, scratching at it frantically and barking with increasing urgency. When Raymond approached, Shadow grabbed his sleeve with gentle but insistent teeth and tried to pull him toward the door. "What's gotten into you, boy?" Raymond asked, but something in Shadow's demeanor made him pause. This wasn't random behavior. This was the trained response of a search and rescue dog who had detected danger. Shadow ran to Leia next, nudging her with his nose and whimpering. When she didn't move fast enough, he carefully took her arm in his mouth and tugged her toward the door. "Granddad, he wants us to leave. Right now." Raymond's military training kicked in. Trust your equipment. Trust your team. And Shadow had just become part of his team. "Okay, boy. We're going." They grabbed their emergency bags and headed for the truck. Shadow refused to get in until both humans were safely inside, then positioned himself between them and the house, still alert and watchful. As they drove away, Raymond called the fire department about the gas smell Shadow might have detected. 20 minutes later, the house next door exploded. In their observation vessel, the Zephyrians sat in stunned silence. "The predator saved them," Mordin whispered. "More than that," Vexhai replied. "He prioritized their safety over his own. He wouldn't seek safety until they were safe first. That's not predator behavior. No. That's pack behavior. Family behavior." The test had provided its answer, but not the one the Galactic Council had expected. The question wasn't whether humans could control apex predators. The question was whether humans had somehow evolved beyond the traditional predator-prey relationship entirely. In the truck, Leia wrapped her arms around Shadow's neck as sirens wailed in the distance. "Good boy, Shadow. Such a good boy." Shadow leaned into her embrace, his job complete. He had protected his pack, just as he'd been trained to do. But this time, it hadn't felt like training. It had felt like love. High above, Commander Vexhai transmitted her report to the Galactic Council, test completed. Conclusion: humans don't dominate apex predators. They partner with them. Recommend immediate diplomatic contact. The age of human-galactic relations was about to begin. First contact. 6 months after the crisis that saved the Grant family, the Galactic Council reached an unprecedented decision. For the first time in their civilization's history, they would initiate contact with a species based not on their technological achievements, but on their capacity for interspecies emotional bonding. The landing site was carefully chosen, a small park in Windendale, Oregon, near the Grant home. The council wanted their first human contact to be with someone who exemplified the extraordinary relationship they'd been studying. Commander Vex-High materialized her ship's cloaking field on a crisp autumn morning. The vessel, no larger than a human automobile, settled gently onto the grass near a walking path where an elderly man exercised with a young girl and a German shepherd. Raymond Grant had seen many impossible things during his military service, but nothing had prepared him for the graceful, luminescent being that approached them with obvious caution. Shadow immediately positioned himself between the alien and his family, but his posture wasn't aggressive. His head was tilted, ears forward, in the classic stance of a dog encountering something new and potentially interesting rather than threatening. "Hello," Vex-High said, her translator rendering the greeting in perfect English. "My name is Commander Vex-High of the Galactic Council. We've been observing your species." Raymond's hand instinctively moved toward Leia, but she stepped forward, her eyes wide with wonder rather than fear. "You're from space," she said simply. "Are you here because of Shadow?" Vex-High's 6 eyes blinked in sequence, her species' expression of surprise. "How did you know?" "Because Shadow's special. Everyone thinks he's just a broken-down old police dog, but he saved us. He's not just a good boy, he's the best boy." Shadow's tail wagged once at the familiar praise, but he maintained his protective stance. "Yes," Vex-High said, kneeling to bring herself closer to the child's eye level. "We've been watching Shadow, and you, and your grandfather. We wanted to understand how your species forms bonds with creatures that could be dangerous." Leia looked at Shadow, then back at the alien. "Shadow's not dangerous to us. He's family. That's what we don't understand. On every other world we've studied, apex predators are either feared, contained, or avoided. But humans invite them into your homes, your families, your hearts." Raymond finally found his voice. "You've been studying our whole planet?" "Your whole species," Vex-High confirmed. "And what we've discovered has changed everything we thought we knew about civilization. You see, most species achieve space flight by conquering their predators. You achieved it by befriending yours." She gestured to Shadow, who had relaxed slightly but remained alert. "This creature possesses the capability to hunt, track, and subdue threats that would terrify most galactic species. Yet you've transformed him into a guardian, a companion, a family member. More remarkably, he chose to accept that transformation." "Shadow chose us too," Leia said softly. "At the auction, when nobody wanted him, I could see that he was just sad and hurt. Like me. And that's when you decided to help each other heal. That's what families do." Vex-High stood slowly, her form shimmering with what Raymond was beginning to recognize as emotion. "The Galactic Council has sent me to extend an invitation. We believe humanity has something to teach the galaxy about building relationships across species barriers. Would you be interested in sharing that knowledge?" Raymond looked down at his granddaughter, who was now sitting cross-legged in the grass with Shadow's head in her lap. The dog's eyes were half closed in contentment as she scratched behind his ears. "What kind of sharing?" Raymond asked cautiously. "Cultural exchange. Diplomatic relations. The possibility of joining a community of 47 different species, all of whom could benefit from understanding how humans create bonds based on love rather than dominance." Leia looked up from Shadow. "Would Shadow come with us?" "If you wanted him to. Though I suspect the galaxy's reaction to meeting their first human-bonded apex predator will be memorable." Shadow's tail thumped against the ground, as if he understood that another adventure was beginning. 3 months later, the first human delegation boarded a Galactic Council transport ship. The delegation consisted of representatives from various fields, diplomats, scientists, doctors, and teachers. But the most important member was a 12-year-old girl and her retired police dog. As their ship prepared to jump to faster-than-light travel, Leia pressed her face against the viewport, watching Earth shrink behind them. Shadow lay beside her, calm and alert, ready to face whatever came next as long as his family was with him. "You know," she told him, "I bet there are lots of planets out there with creatures that just need someone to call them good boys." Shadow's tail wagged in agreement. Throughout the galaxy, species that had spent millennia fearing their own apex predators watched in amazement as a small human girl and her dangerous companion prepared to teach them that the strongest bonds aren't forged through dominance, but through love, trust, and a simple recognition that every creature, no matter how fierce, just wants to belong somewhere. And in the cargo hold of the ship, carefully stored in climate-controlled containers, were several dozen Earth animals that various council members had specifically requested to meet: retired military dogs, therapy cats, rescue horses, and even a few parrots who had learned to speak multiple human languages. The galaxy was about to discover that humans hadn't just domesticated apex predators. They had turned them into ambassadors. The end.